so that you can print it off or share it also at a future date. So here's the tips that we're going to share today. Tip number 1, plan your booth. Tip number 2, plan your goal. Plan your follow-up, some tips on what to do, what not to do, thinking about some of your giveaways, and also some tips to plan for success and then to do a post-show analysis. So I'm going to start right away with plan your booth. So as you see, often our booths, we get lost in the show. So as you think about planning ahead of time, think about taking time to invest in a graphic artist to make sure that you have a professional look. Think of the 3-second rule. So as people are walking by your booth, they should be able to quickly recognize your company name, what it is that you do, and why you do it better. So you want to sell yourself in a real quick method. And then find a way to invite people into your space. So one of the ways that I thought was really great about this is Radon West, they did a booth with Dr. Godarzi, and they had a way of doing a DNA where it was hands-on with people could touch it and understand kind of the concept of breaking DNA structure. Another way that you could do inviting people into your space is just make sure the way that you set up your booth is that you put the table off to the side or move it back so that people have to step into your space. So sometimes the walkways are really busy during these shows, and you don't want them to feel like they need to hurry on or they're in somebody's way. And you also want to find ways to engage them. So it could be the way that you set your booth up. So if you set your table off to the side and you're there and you can engage face-to-face with them, that might be one way to invite people in. Also think of a way to engage them. So like I shared with the Godarzi's DNA structure where they could actually touch it, that was a way that they could engage people, and that was a comfortable way for them to talk about radon. For you, if you're a mitigation professional, it might be to have an actual mitigation system set up. So you might have the pipe and fan set up, mocked right up there in your space. And so people could touch it. So it could be turned on. It doesn't even have to be turned on. But they could actually touch the fan and touch the pipe. And even though it's a real simple thing, it's a way that they can engage with you. So think about your strengths and what you're comfortable talking with, and see if you can find ways to engage people with that. Our next tip is establish your goal. So plan ahead what this may be. Is it sales? Is it exposure? You want to just get your name out there and have recognition. It's important to stop and think about the audience of the show. So if the show is a health show, then people are coming there thinking that about their health. And so you may want to develop your pamphlets, even your talking points and your backdrops with that message in mind. Think about how your product and your service relates to their health. If they're coming for renovation, then you might want to think about where in the steps of their renovation planning you fit in, and then help them with that. So develop a handout or talking points where they're coming in thinking, okay, I want to renovate this or renovate that. And you can say, well, as you're in the process of renovation, here's how we fit in. So think about why people are coming to the show and plan for that in advance. And one of the things we also wanted to talk a little bit about was, so we'll share a little bit of our experiences, but we also wanted to talk about the upcoming CARST conference and ways that, that you can use that. So Erin, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to make sure you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, as all our webinar participants probably know, but the CARST conference is unique in that we tend to see many of the same people every year. So one of the goals at the CARST conference, something to bear in mind, is that when you're there, this is a great opportunity to build a relationship with CARST members and other people who attend the conference year after year. So whereas if you were at a renovation show or a home show, you're really probably seeing those people only once. It's a one-time impression, and you may want to follow up with them, and you may develop great relationships. But really at the CARST show, you definitely want to foster good relationships because you're going to see these people again and again. And not only that, but these are people who are very informed about radon. So whereas we see this with our presenters too, some of our speakers start with the basics of radon, and of course you don't need to at the CARST show. So whereas you might need to give basic information about radon and then talk about, how you can help them mitigate, really at the CARST show you can just focus on maybe some of the more technical or subtle details about why your mitigation systems might be superior or why they might fit with that particular client's needs. So that's a bit of a subtlety, and it differentiates CARST from other conferences.
Good, thanks, Erin. And so our next tip is to plan your follow-up. So even ahead of the show, you should be thinking about what you want to do after the show. And an important thing about this is that in order to be able to follow up, you need to figure out how to connect with them. So figure out how you're going to track your leads. Make sure you collect the right information up front, and even take time to prepare the correspondence that you're going to send them after the show. Prepare it before the show. Walking through each of those 3 steps will help you frame, kind of wrap your mind around how you're going to follow up, and you might realize that you're missing some pieces of information ahead of time. You may end up changing a little bit of the correspondence at the end, but the other thing that preparing ahead of time does is it's one step to make sure that you do actually follow up with that correspondence. So if you've got the draft letter written, you don't have to do that afterwards. You've already got your sample done. And so do some preparation beforehand to make sure that you're ready to follow up after the show. All right, now one of the things that I found really helpful, so often I go to, I've been doing trade shows with Health Canada reps, and the government reps often have sort of a list of what to do and what not to do. And I thought I'd share this with you because I found it's really helpful, even though I do think I handle myself fairly professionally. Sometimes these shows get really long, sometimes you're tired and whatnot, and so it's helpful just to sort of have a quick note of things, of what to do and what not to do. And some of you may also be having staff come and join you in the booth, and so you can quickly have a tip sheet that you can give them on best practices, and it makes it a little bit more comfortable to talk about what to do and what not to do. So quickly, what not to do: don't text or talk on your phone while you're in your booth. If you need to, take time to step out of the booth, but really try and focus on the attendees while you're there. Don't eat in your booth. Don't disappear for long periods of time. Try and make your breaks short. Don't overstaff the booth. I found this too, that if there's more than a couple of us in the booth, people may resist stopping because they may think that you're all you're busy already, or sometimes you may have a tendency to chit-chat with each other. So make sure there's space in your booth for attendees to come in. Don't complain or criticize. So whether it's your competition or maybe the show isn't well done, the event isn't well done, and it's tempting to criticize and you feel a little bit embarrassed, just don't. It just is better not to. Don't treat the show like a vacation. This is really important time that you get face-to-face with attendees. Don't sit down, stay standing, and this really helps make it seem like you're ready to engage with people and are more approachable. And one tip about this is, for some of us, it's a long day and it's a long time to stand. So we've kind of found different ways to help us. One is finding a really good flooring. We have a puzzle type floor that we put together. So some shows you go to, you have to provide the floor or carpet, or you have to have some type of carpet, but not all shows. So even any show that we go to, we've discovered this puzzle type flooring that's really squishy and it's really comfortable on the feet. And so it really is, for those shows that are long, it just adds that extra piece of comfort. Another tip that we've had, and we've used this at many booths, is to have a stool that we can adjust. So you actually just perch. So if either you just can't stand for long periods of time, or you're just tired, feeling like you're going to be tired, it's a nice way that you can kind of perch on it so you sort of still stay up and engaged, and you're not necessarily sitting down. Also, don't chew gum, and don't get busy talking to each other. So some tips of things of what to do. Smile, arrive early, and be prepared to stay late. Create an inviting space. Use people's names. So as you get talking with people and you do happen to find out their name, try and use it in the conversation. Don't overuse it, but it'll help you remember it if you use it at least once or twice. Have a way to take notes. So make sure that you take a book or something so that you can take notes, and then make sure you actually use it. And in that notes, try and include a couple things about the conversation points that you had with a person. This will help you remember the conversation later and remember some of the context of the conversation. Make friends with your booth neighbors. And especially if you don't have somebody helping you with manning your booth and you're on your own and you need to step out, then you could talk to your neighbors and say, oh, I'm just running to the bathroom, or I'm just going here and I'll be right back. And if they tell people that are walking by looking for you that, oh, you'll be right back, then it is more likely that people will come back. And so, and there's other things that I found is just really helpful if you connect with your neighbors. Also, they're also potential interested customers. So, getting to know them and interacting with them can also be helpful because they also might be interested in your product or your service. When you're talking with people, let people know that you're glad to talk with them. And I find this especially at shows that are extremely busy, where people stop, but then there's a lineup. Try and help people understand that you are glad that you're talking to them, and that the information that you're sharing with them is valuable, because sometimes people feel like they need to rush away so that you can talk to the next person. And on the flip side, a show that is really slow and that there's only a couple people there, make sure that you make those people feel valuable, that even though, there's only a few people at the show, that you're there for them. And I think that really it helps put them at ease with wondering why there are the only a few people at the show. And then if you can have help, possibly if you have 2 people scheduled for the booth, this way you can step away to talk on your phone or to eat or do sorts of that type of thing and still have somebody at the booth. All right, giveaways, pamphlets, and those sorts of things. One rule of thumb I heard was to plan for 10% of the projected attendance. So I'm always not sure how much to print, and so this was a good rule of thumb for me to think through. And then also 3 quick tips that I heard from one presentation that I went to that I thought was really useful to share. Have a simple, cheap piece that everybody can take. And so you can put that on your table or on your display so that it's not going to cost you a ton if everybody in the show takes it. And I do find that there are 2 extreme groups of people, right? There's that one group who go around and take everything off the table. So they want a piece of everything that you've got on display, and then they're just going to walk by your booth, and then they're going to go by the next booth, and then they're going to go by the next booth. And by the end of the show, they're going to have a bag with, hundreds of pieces of paper in it. Most likely, they're not going to go back and read your piece, but they want it. Then there's the other extreme where people more and more are not wanting to take anything. And so if you have something that's really simple, they may be more likely to take it than a thick brochure that they're going to take a long time to digest. And then take that brochure that is a little bit more detailed and set it aside so that when you do have in-depth conversation with somebody and they're looking for information, then you can pull it out and say, okay, here's my more in-depth information. Or you may be in a really busy show and somebody really is looking for information, and you're busy talking with somebody. You can just kind of quickly hand them a piece of information that has more in it, and maybe that will give them something to do while they're waiting to talk with you. And then if you have pieces of swag like those giveaway items, then you may want to put them under the table. And then give them to people that have engaged with you, to stop and talk, to say, yeah, here's something to remember us by. And that way you don't feel like you're being pilfered by those who just want to come by and pick every free thing up, but you have a strategy on how to use them. Another thing that we've discovered is that using people's camera is a great way to engage them. So because we have this group of audience who really don't want to take paper anymore, we have found that they like to take pictures of things. And so there's a couple really good pieces of things that we've used. And so I'm going to quickly show you some of our handouts that we've got prepared that will help you with engaging people and talking with them. And so these are some of our free handouts that we have. This piece of paper in particular, it's a full 8x11 sheet that we've printed off, and it talks about a radon mitigation system. And it really takes it to a simple concept because we can point and we can show it to them. And what we found is they don't necessarily want to take it, but they could take a picture of it on their phone, and then they've got the information there. They can zoom in and they can read the bubbles and they can see the mitigation system, but they don't have to walk away with a piece of paper. And honestly, I think that for myself, I go back to my pictures on my phone more often than I go to that bag of paper that's in a pile in my house. So I think this may be a really great way to engage with people. Another way we did it now, so often when we go to trade shows, we'll have a list of the local contractors, and people really want to know how to get their test kits. And so we'll put out this list, and then they'll take a picture of it so that they can go back and refer to the list in the past. And so that's one way. You may have a mock-up of a system or some type of display. And so just by giving people permission and saying, yeah, take a picture of it, then you can use this idea, and it can be helpful for them in the future, and helpful for you because it's cheap. There's nothing that you're giving away when they take a picture of something. All right, tip number 6 is plan for success. So of course we want you to have a positive attitude, but really more in depth what we mean is that the time that you put into planning for your follow-up, make sure that after the show that you plan actually to have some of those people to follow up with. And so set time aside in your schedule for this follow through, and then actually follow through on the actions that you've planned. And what I often find is that you put a lot of effort preparing for the show, and by the time the show is over, there's sort of this downward emotion and exhaustion. And so make sure that you put this item into your calendar, note it, and that just helps me remember, yeah, I am going to follow up. So after I'm tired after a show and I feel like, okay, I'm done with that, I remember, no, I'm not quite done. I have these things left to follow up. A quick note about follow-up. So what kinds of things can you follow up with? So you could just simply say a thank you. Part of this is in planning your goals, to know what you want to get out of the show, that you're intending that you did achieve that, and so your follow-up should kind of be based on what your goals were for the show. It could be, if somebody wants to schedule you for your service, then you're following up to put that into your schedule. Maybe you're just following up with information. That's often what I do. People are really coming to our booth because they're looking for information, and so the follow-up means that I am just sending them the reference information or the website links. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll make a list of what everybody wants to know, and so I'll reply to the person for what the information, but I may just have a quick tips sheet and say, questions other people were asking at the show, because really if one person asked the question, it may be the other person didn't think to ask the question. So I'll just send out sort of a quick answers to some common questions from the show that could help everybody. All right, and then our last tip is do a post-show analysis. So take time after the show also to think through a few questions. What worked? So what caught people's attention and helped them stop? What were the best talking points? What were people most interested in? Also take time to think what didn't work. Maybe there's something on your pamphlets that you would change, or maybe something on your banners. I had this situation where I thought I did a great job planning my banner. I thought of that 3-second rule, and I had a graphic artist design it. And it looked really good when I was setting it up. But then when I was at the show, I realized that the print was on the bottom of the banner and the images were on the top of the banner. And because I was standing at my booth, I often was standing in front of the print. And so the next time I printed the banner, I just flipped it. So I put the print at the top of the banner and the picture at the bottom so that it was a little more easily noticeable. So if you plan that, if you make that change ahead of time, even if you've got a graphic artist that's working on it, send them an email saying, okay, here's some things I would change about our pamphlet. Even if you don't print them right away, then you've got that change ready. So the next time you go to print, you don't have to remember, okay, what was it that we wanted to change? This is also a tip that I've discovered, that I like to do economies of scale. So if it's cheaper to print 1,000, even though I may only need 200 for this show and 300 for the next show, if it's a brand new pamphlet, I try it out at a show first and print a sample, print enough for one show, and then print economies of scale for the next time. And then take notes about what to do next time. So make sure, take some time to talk with your team and brainstorm through these 3 questions and decide what else that you might do. All right, and we have Alana on the phone as well, and so I'm going to unmute you, Alana. And if you've got, she can talk through some ideas about working with a graphic artist.
Hi, Pam. Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi, we can hear you, so that's perfect.
Great. That was really great, Pam. I think you covered some wonderful points on preparing for a booth. Just before going on talking about a graphic artist, there was a time in my career where I did spend a lot of time at trade shows, and I'll just tell you about one of them. This was actually a big show that happens every year in Toronto. It's the PDAC, and it's the Prospectors and Developers show. So it's big, like they draw in a lot of people, and it was probably the most remarkable thing that I saw in all of the years I had been attending and doing trade shows was this little company. It was a little exploration company called North Star Resources. I don't even know if they're around anymore. But what they did is they had this pyramid in their booth. And it was this white kind of fluffy pyramid that you could see from a distance. And it was such a curiosity. What was this thing? Everyone had these wonderful graphics and, like flashy things and computer screens. And when you got up to it, it was this stack of little stuffy polar bears. And stamped on the foot, embroidered on the foot of each of these bears, instead of like a little paw print, was the North Star Resources logo, which worked really well there. And these were small little economical things that they got done, and they were giveaways. You had to enter your business card, and I think you had to spend. They timed you. You had to spend something like a minimum of 2 minutes in the booth or something, and you got one of these giveaways. And they only had so many, so word spread really fast. And the thing is, these bears had absolutely nothing to do with their business. Yes, they were exploring in the north for gold and diamonds, but what the thing was is the people that were coming to this trade show, most of them had children. So this company had done their research and found, okay, what's the demographic of people coming to our show? Well, most of them were of a certain age range, and they were parents, and they were away from their children for the PDAC. I think was 4 or 5 days, and you might tack on meetings and other things, on top of that. So maybe you're in Toronto for a week. So people wanted these bears to give to their kids when they got home. And because they only had a limited amount, word traveled really fast. And their booth, I'll tell you, every day of that show, their booth was packed. And then they had, the list of people. We'll get a few more bears and send one out to you. So this was an interesting strategy that I hadn't seen done before. That they were targeting. They'd done enough research on the people that were coming to the show that they were finding out they were connecting with them on an emotional level. So, and that was their relationship to their children.
That's a great example. I was thinking about trying to put out some ideas for what the giveaways are, but it really takes a lot of thought to come up with a good giveaway. And that point that you raised in the beginning, should it be something that is relevant to your product, or should it be more something that is relevant for the audience? And I think that really depends on the situation and your situation, and you know, trying to get your logo on something.
For sure. I mean, I think, you know, as you mentioned earlier, and it was such a great point, like, you know, you're building relationships with these people, particularly for the CARST conference, as Erin was talking about. Like, these are people you see again and again. And so, you know, not all of us are, you know, great talkers, or sometimes, you know, we get tired or whatever it is. So, you know, ways that you have of making those connections with people. And I mean, you know, as human beings, we very much operate on an emotional level, you know, like it or not, we do. And so for people to remember you and to actually want to do business with you, you know, what is it like? You know, like, I don't know, you know, I've had clients that I've worked with in the past that, you know, just for whatever reason, they're, you know, the working relationship wasn't fun, or it wasn't enjoyable. And it was just like, okay, we're here, we're getting the job done, and then we're done. You know, and, you know, the next time around, you know, would I want to work with that client over another client?
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, that was just so much more fun. Well, you know, chances are I'm going to choose the more fun client. It's just the way we are, right? We have enough stresses in life that we prefer to work with people that are enjoyable. So I think that, I mean, that's a big part of it too. You know, I mean, you know, like interacting with people, designing for people. This is all being done. There needs to be that balance, you know. So there's the balance, whether it's in your communication materials themselves, like printed materials or online materials or banners, or it's the you know, live interaction of being in the booth. There needs to be that balance of listening. So, you know, what is it that somebody is coming into my booth for? Right? And it's perfectly valid to ask those questions like, hey, you know, great to see you. I'm so-and-so. What's your name? What brought you in here? Right? What caught your eye? And that's great information, right? So you're actually like information gathering, but you're connecting with the person, like you're interested, you're listening, right? Like, what is it that they want? Because chances are you know, if, like, I mean, Radon Environmental, you know, we cover so many different grounds. Like, you know, there's mapping, there's mitigation, there's products, there's services, you know, there's a lot. So if somebody's coming into the Radon Environmental booth, you know, we don't know what they're coming in for. Maybe they actually just liked, you know, the picture of Mike Holmes. You know, maybe that was it. Or maybe it was, you know, the Airwell, you know, device. And they're like, oh, well, what, you know, that's interesting. What's that? So it's really great information for us to know why they're coming in, but also, you know, on a human level, you know, what's the conversation starter? How do things go? And then to figure out, well, what information can I give them that's useful to them? You know, as opposed to me knowing, like, you know, what do I need to sell? What do I need to push? What is it that they're interested in? And then
so that can help next time to prepare for what people actually were asking and what they were looking for.
Yeah. And how can you know, and it's that mindset of how can you be of service to people, right?
Yeah.
Because once they understand that you're, you know, we're all doing our work in our own ways, you know, but if they understand that you're providing a service and you're genuinely interested in helping others with that service, they're like, oh, okay, well, you know, I have this problem. Can we talk about it? You know, sure. You know, like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's find out, you know, if there's a way that we can work together. You know, and then they pay you for your service, and you give them your time, and there's that exchange, right? So it's kind of thinking on that level as like, you know, here's a potential person I'm going to do business with. What can I do for them? What information do they need?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to radon mitigation, there's a number of steps that you need to get to before you actually get to fixing. And so if you go to a show and you realize that most of the people at this show are at, you know, pre-testing or something, or maybe that most of these people at the show have heard about radon and now they're actually seeking kind of to understand what a mitigation system is, then the next time you can kind of go, oh, this is where these people were at last year when I was here, so now I can prepare for that. that conversation a little bit better.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and you know, we're all, you know, in our own fields, we're all experts, right? So I mean, it's having that confidence too, you know, of being in there and being like, yeah, you know, like I know, you know, I'm here, you know, and I want to, you know, connect with people. I want to, you know, give them the information they need, and you know, just and then continue on the conversation.
Yeah. So one question I have for you, you're a graphic artist, and we've used you for helping us out many times as CARST. And so I thought it might be helpful to share some tips for people if they come in to approach a graphic artist. Is there something they should be prepared for ahead of time, or some questions that you typically ask when a person first comes to you with a project?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, the very first question is, why are you working with a graphic artist? So, you know, what is it that you're looking for? You know, what's the purpose of you know, going down that road? You know, graphic artists, you know, that are, I mean, most graphic artists that I know have gone through communications training. So, you know, what we're part of it is having the skills, you know, with the programs and with, you know, an artistic background and knowing about color and layout and what do people respond to in different situations. That's part of it. But the other part of training as a graphic artist is communication with your clients. So and there's ways that you can be prepared with information when you approach a graphic artist that can just take the conversation really quickly to a next level. Because after all, like, you know, this is time, this is your time, this is their time. So you kind of want to maximize that time that you're spending together. And perhaps you're paying for it, or perhaps you're just having an initial meeting. But you'll go a long way if you know what it is that you need just to start, even though that might change throughout the conversation. And flexibility is really great too, because a lot of graphic designers have experience or have specific training in environments like trade shows, you know, where there's a particular kind of lighting. There's even the air quality in those shows, right? Like there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of graphics, there's flashing lights. So, you know, what materials do you have? And then, you know, what kind of image do you want to portray? You know, what's your goal for the communication materials that you have? You know, graphic artists will help you a lot along that way. But if you can come to them with some basic answers to, you know, what's your intention and what's your audience? You know, like, are you wanting to reach people in your community? You know, and is that a particular age range? Are these people coming from a particular knowledge base, you know, or is this something more of like a general show where you're trying to reach the public, like you know, mass public, right? So these are all questions that are, you know, they're actually kind of fun to think about, right? Like take a little bit of time and they're puzzles, right? Like try and, you know, sometimes you're wrong and that's fine too. It's all a learning process.
Yeah.
But having those answers ready for your designer will help them a lot with then, you know, challenging you with further questions for you to think about, so that,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, you're going to get something that's really, really useful for you and hopefully has some longevity.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, I often tell people that if they're going to speak, that they should sort of run through a practice run of their speech before they get up and give a talk. And my other thing is really, I think, kind of the same thing at the trade show. So if you go and you design things with a graphic artist and you get the proofs from them, one, always make sure you review the proofs, check for spelling, and make sure it actually, you know, invest that time, even though you've just spent a whole bunch of time prior to that to actually get to the point where they develop it. Make sure you really look at it with clear eyes to catch any of those typos or spelling mistakes. But then also, before you print them, kind of picture yourself in the setup of the show and just sort of imagine and mock up what a situation is going to look at and see that those are the pieces that you want. You know, like I said, standing in front of the banner all of a sudden made me realize it didn't quite. So sort of put yourself in that pretend situation to sort of see it. Kristen,
Yeah,
actually,
you know,
quick tip. I'm going to share it quickly here, Alana.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kristen talked about using social media, which I think is another great way to promote on the spot when you're at a show. So most of the shows have a hashtag that you can use. And so you can tweet about the show. And if you use that hashtag, people will search on it. So even if you aren't connected with them by followers, you can now suddenly connect with people that don't know you by using that hashtag. And you could even give a shout out to your booth neighbors. So if you use their Twitter handle, now suddenly you've connected with them. Another idea she said was use a promotion. So post a photo at you at your booth and with the hashtag the test for radon, and then you can offer them a free test kit. So that's a great idea, Kristen. Sorry, Alana, you want to talk a little bit more about the proofs?
Oh, yeah. A really great strategy is get someone that you work with or a friend, a spouse, to review before you finalize anything, because having that extra set of eyes who hasn't seen it before to proof any of your work is, they'll catch things really quickly.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, and somebody who might be more like your audience. So you might be an expert on your product, but if you can get somebody who's not an expert to take a look at it and make sure they understand what you said, that actually too is really helpful, because then you see it more in the eyes of the people that you're trying to talk to.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Okay, so I'm curious about swag items. So if somebody has some thought that they've put into or some great swag items, I'd love it if you could chat those in. Or if you have any questions, then we'll take some time to answer some questions. We have one really great question. How do you deal with people who are there to gather information and basically learn from you so they can then make that your business? And that's a really tricky one, because it does happen. And I think that we can learn from each other. And to me, I think I'd handle this with the mind of this relationship aspect. So if you suspect this person is just trying to learn from you so that they can set up their own business, then you may want to just think about developing a rapport with them of respect, and think about that longevity, that as you become competitors, that you can kind of have a level of going back and forth and sharing information, but you really, I would treat all the attendees the same, and provide them the information, thinking about them being customers. But it's hard to stop her in it, and you can't really get frustrated with them, because at the time, you never know. Maybe they won't actually follow through. Maybe they'll realize it's more complicated. But I think just be honest with them about the work that you've done and the time that you've invested in getting the expertise. I think. Any other questions or any other thoughts? Maybe I'll take a quick minute to just talk about the upcoming CARST conference. We, as most of you know, we do have a hashtag, speaking of social media, so you can watch for posts coming out at hashtag CARST 2018, and feel free to use that yourself as you're talking about your upcoming travels. The registration is up online, and so if you have any questions or challenges with that, you can always email it, but it is accessible online. We have a field trip day on Saturday the 21st, which there's just a couple spots open still, so if you're interested in that, let me know in a hurry, because I think we only have a couple spots left. And then Sunday is the all-day CE courses, so if you are a certified professional and you're looking at getting your courses for your renewal, this is a really great way to get them. Plus, we've got some great content. I've just posted that up online, so you can see the schedule of courses that we've got so far. I expect I'm just arranging one more course, so it should be posted in the next week as well, coming. But that's under pre-conference material is the schedule for the CE courses. And then Brook Street has good rates for us, so those are open till mid-March. So make sure you take time to to book your hotel. And then we also, I quickly span through some of our resources, but you can order any of our CARST and C-NRPP resources that we've got, and we will send them to you free of charge. So we've got specific workplace resources, and this is actually a really good example of material that I would maybe put aside and not just have out displayed, that if it's not specifically a work centered conference, then I have this infographic piece in a hard plastic shield that I sometimes set up, and it's just kind of interesting facts that people can stop and read, and it kind of gives them something to do at the booth. But I might set aside the pamphlet, so once we engage and I see, oh, maybe they really are interested in more information on workplaces, then I'll pull that out. But we've got some postcards on some basic of radon, the building codes that are coming in, and then, like I said, I don't have it in this picture, but we do have some more detailed information about mitigation systems. And so you can send me an email and let us know. All right, so one question about the conference: is there anything planned about radon and cannabis? And we do. We have one presentation who's been individual who's been doing research. She actually just got some press about her research in the last couple of weeks, but she's been studying the effects on cells of radon exposure, smoke exposure, and cannabis exposure. So she'll share some of her research with us. And yeah, if you want any of the labels and the pamphlets, then just send me an email to info@carst.ca, and then we'll send you some pieces. Good. All right, I'm going to unmute everybody, I think. So if there is some questions that people want to jump in, if it's noisy in your background, you can mute yourself. But if anybody wants to share verbally any questions, then I'll give you a quick chance to do that. All right. Well, I think we've answered all the questions, and yeah, we really appreciate the time that you guys have given us and joining us in the webinar today, and especially to Alana. Really thank you for joining us and sharing with us some of your experiences and some information about your experience at trade shows and working with a graphic artist.
Thanks, Sam. Happy to share.
It's great. And yeah, I think that's it. So thanks very much for joining us today. And like I said, we will put some of these quick tips up online so you can download the list and refer to them in the future. We'll talk to you again later. Bye.